A world-renowned doctor steals the show from President Obama at the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, blasting the president's agenda right in front of him. It's a speech that's caught a lot of people's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Benjamin Carson.
May I introduce the Director of Pediatric Neurosurgery at one of the world's great hospitals, Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Dr. Benjamin Carson, Sr.
Thank you so much. Continue on that theme of education. In 1831, Alexis de Tocqueville came to America to study this country. The Europeans were fascinated. How could a fledgling nation, barely 50 years old, already be competing with them on virtually every level? This was impossible. De Tocqueville was going to sort it out. And he looked at our government, and he was duly impressed by the three branches of government. 4 now, because now special interest groups, but it was only 3 back in those days. And, he said, wow, this is really something. And then he said, but let me look at their educational system. And he was blown away. See, that anybody finishing the 2nd grade was completely literate. He could find a mountain man on the outskirts of society. The man could read the newspaper, could have a political discussion, could tell him how the government worked. If you really want to be impressed, take a look at the chapter on education in my latest book, America the Beautiful, which I wrote with my wife, came out last year. And in that education chapter, you will see questions extracted from a 6th grade exit exam from the 1800s. A test you had to pass to get your 6th grade certificate. I doubt most college graduates today could pass that test. We have dumbed things down to that level. And the reason that is so dangerous is because the people who founded this nation said that our system of government was designed for a well-informed and educated populace. And when they become less informed, they become vulnerable. Think about that. Our system of government, and that's why the education is so vitally important. Now, some people say, you're overblowing it, things aren't that bad. And you're a doctor, a neurosurgeon. Why are you concerned about these things? I've got news for you. 5 doctors signed the Declaration of Independence. Doctors were involved in the framing of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, a whole bunch of things. It's only been in recent decades that we've extracted ourselves, which I think is a big mistake. We need doctors and we need scientists, engineers. We need all of those people involved in government, not just lawyers. I don't have anything against lawyers, but, here's the thing about lawyers, and I'm sorry, but I got to be truthful, okay? Got to be truthful. What do lawyers learn in law school? To win. By hook or by crook, you got to win. So you got all these Democrat lawyers and you got all these Republican lawyers, and their side wants to win. We need to get rid of that. What we need to start thinking about is how do we solve problems? And now, before I get shot, let me finish here. Now, why is it so important that we educate our people? Because we don't want to go down the same pathway as many other pinnacle nations who have preceded us. I think particularly about ancient Rome. Very powerful. Nobody could even challenge them militarily. But what happened to them? They destroyed themselves from within. Moral decay. Fiscal irresponsibility. They destroyed themselves. And if you don't think that can happen to America, you get out your books and you start reading. But we can fix it. Why can we fix it? Because we're smart. We have some of the most intellectually gifted people leading our nation. All we need to do is remember what our real responsibilities are so we can solve the problems. I think about these problems all the time. And, my role model was Jesus. And he used parables to help people understand things. And one of our big problems right now And like I said, I'm not politically correct, so I'm sorry. But, you know, our deficit is a big problem. Think about it. And our national debt, $16.5 trillion. You think that's not a lot of money? Tell you what, count one number per second, which you can't even do because once you get to 1,000, it takes you longer than a second. But one number per second. You know how long it would take you to count the 16 trillion? 507,000 years. More than 500,000 years to get there. We have to deal with this. What about our taxation system? So complex. There is no one who can possibly comply with every jot and tittle of our tax. If I wanted to get you or you, I could get you on a tax issue. That doesn't make any sense. What we need to do is come up with something that's simple. And when I pick up my Bible, you know what I see? I see the fairest individual in the universe, God, and He's given us a system. It's called tithe. Now, we don't necessarily have to do it 10%, but it's principle. He didn't say, if your crops fail, don't give me any tithes. He didn't say, if you have a bumper crop, give me triple tithes. So there must be something inherently fair about proportionality. You make $10 billion, you put in $1 billion. You make $10, you put in $1. Of course, you got to get rid of the loopholes. But now some people say, well, that's not fair because it doesn't hurt the guy who made $10 billion as much as the guy who made 10. Where does it say you have to hurt the guy? He just put $1 billion in the pot. You know, we don't need to hurt him. You know, it's that kind of thinking. It's that kind of thinking that has resulted in 602 banks in the Cayman Islands. That money needs to be back here, building our infrastructure and creating jobs. And we're smart enough to figure out how to do that. We've already started down the path of solving one of the other big problems, healthcare. We need to have good healthcare for everybody. It's the most important thing that a person can have. Money means nothing, titles means nothing when you don't have your health. But we got to figure out efficient ways to do it. We spend a lot of money on healthcare, twice as much per capita as anybody else in the world, and yet not very efficient. What can we do? Here's my solution. When the person is born, give them a birth certificate, an electronic medical record, and a health savings account, to which money can be contributed pre-tax from the time you're born to the time you die. When you die, you can pass it on to your family members so that when you're 85 years old and you got 6 diseases, you're not trying to spend up everything. You're happy to pass it on, and there's nobody talking about death panels. That's number one. And also, you know, for the people who are indigent, who don't have any money, we can make contributions to their HSA each month because we already have this huge pot of money. Instead of sending it to some bureaucracy, let's put it in their HSAs. Now they have some control over their own health care. And what do you think they're going to do? They're going to learn very quickly how to be responsible. When Mr. Jones gets that diabetic foot ulcer, he's not going to the emergency room and blowing a big chunk of it. He's going to go to the clinic. He learns that very quickly. Gets the same treatment. In the emergency room, they send him out. In the clinic, they say, now let's get your diabetes under control so you're not back here in 3 weeks with another problem. That's how we begin to solve these kinds of problems. It's much more complex than that, and I don't have time to go into it all. But we can do all of these things because we're smart people. And propping up that flag, they would not let that flag go down because they believed in what that flag symbolized. And what did it symbolize? One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. God bless.